What's the hardest thing you ever got paid to do? Something that left you questioning everything afterward. I was scrolling through Craigslist looking for odd jobs when I found the weirdest post I'd ever seen. Cry at my funeral for $200. It sounded like a joke at first. But in my experience, the weirdest posts were always the ones that actually paid. So I sent a text and agreed to meet. Turns out, it wasn't a joke. The woman, Elaine, slid a rolled-up $100 bill across the cafe table like some sketchy dealer and smiled. That's your deposit. The other 100 comes after you ugly cry at my funeral in about 6 weeks. I just stared at her, completely lost. She looked maybe mid-30s, healthy, beautiful even, just a little tired around the eyes. Your funeral? In 6 weeks? I asked. She nodded, calm. The doctors gave me 4 to 6 weeks before pancreatic cancer takes me out. I know it's a weird request, but I don't have anyone left to mourn me. My friends are all shallow, my family's gone. I just want someone who'll actually cry when I'm gone. I couldn't say no. I felt awful. I can cry, I told her, trying to sound reassuring. I'm really good at crying. Elaine laughed, a small, tired giggle. You can't just show up and cry about nothing, she said. You need to know me first. Have memories, real ones to cry about. So we started meeting up on weekends. We'd hang out, take selfies and little videos together, pretending we'd been friends for years. This is me at camp, she said one day, pointing to a photo of a skinny kid with braces. My parents sent me hoping I'd learn to swim. I just learned to be terrified of the water. She handed me stacks of old photo albums, telling me stories about every person in them like I was reading her diary. Somehow, it felt peaceful, getting to know her, seeing the life she'd lived. Next time we met, she brought out a dusty binder and smiled. This, she said, is my literal bucket list. The first few pages were filled with adventures I'd never expect from her: cave diving, pyramids in Egypt, deep sea exploration. You're amazing, I told her. She smiled sadly. Kind of funny that all those adventures end here. Then she shrugged. Anyway, no sadness tonight. You have something to learn for me. She opened Spotify on her phone. This is for the funeral playlist. My best friend should at least know my favorite songs. When Endless Love started playing, she set her camera down, held out her hand, and said, "Let's dance." We swayed in her small apartment, her head resting against my chest, the scent of cinnamon shampoo filling the air. "Can I tell you something?" she whispered. I act like I'm fine, but I'm terrified. She cried softly, her tears soaking into my shirt. For what it's worth, I told her, you're brave. And I'm glad I get to call you my friend. We spent the next few weekends filling a small photo album, restaurants, local concerts, tiny adventures that somehow felt right when she was there. But she was fading fast, losing weight, moving slower, wincing when she thought I wasn't looking. Eventually, our meetups moved to her bedroom. We'd just watch movies, talk, and take a few last photos for the funeral before she needed to rest again. One night, after a rough day, she looked at me and said, "I wish we'd met when I was healthy. We could have had something real." When I leaned in to kiss her, she turned away. "Please don't fall for a dying woman," she whispered. "It's the worst investment you'll ever make. And it'll only make me feel worse." I should have kissed her anyway. The next morning, I got a call from her lawyer. Elaine had passed away in her sleep. The funeral was set for 2 days later. I thought I was ready. I wasn't at the funeral. The director handed me a program with one of our selfies on the cover. Elaine had listed me as her dearest friend in the obituary. The tears that came were fake. I cried through the entire eulogy, talking about her adventures, her laugh, the dancing, the little moments we shared, but I shouldn't have cried for her. Months later, sitting in one of her favorite restaurants, I saw her. At first, I thought I was hallucinating. She was blonde now, healthy, glowing. But I knew that laugh, that smile, the way she tilted her head when she was amused. Elaine, our eyes met across the room. My fork froze halfway to my mouth and clattered onto the plate. Her smile faltered. Panic flashed in her eyes. She looked away quickly, pretending not to know me. My hands shook as I gripped the edge of the table, heart pounding. She was laughing with some guy in a suit, wearing a dress that probably cost more than my rent, acting like none of it ever happened. But I knew that was Elaine, the same woman who told me she was dying. The same woman whose funeral I cried through, and in that moment, all I could think about was that first day in the coffee shop, when she slid that rolled-up $100 bill across the table and told me she had 6 weeks to live. She'd wanted someone to cry for her, and God help me, I really did. So, we started spending weekends together after that. Elaine showed me these thick old photo albums full of pictures from her childhood, summer camps, school plays, family vacations. She pointed to one photo of her scrawny younger self at camp and said her parents had sent her there so she'd finally learn how to swim. Didn't work, she laughed. I just ended up more afraid of water. Then she pulled out this dusty binder, her bucket list. Inside were pictures and notes about everything she'd done, cave trips, ocean dives, even standing in front of the pyramids in Egypt. I told her she was incredible, but she just smiled, that small, sad smile that said none of it really mattered anymore. One evening, she played a song on her phone and asked me to dance with her right there in her tiny apartment. We swayed slowly while some old love song played, and she rested her head against my chest. Her hair smelled like cinnamon. After a moment, she whispered that she was scared, even though she tried to act brave. Tears slid down her face and soaked through my shirt. I told her I was glad to call her a friend, and I meant every word. Over the next few weeks, we went to little restaurants and concerts together, taking photos for the funeral slideshow she wanted. But she started fading. She lost weight. She moved slower. She'd wince when she thought I wasn't watching. Before long, our hangouts moved from her couch to her bed because she was too tired to do much else. We'd just watch movies with her head on my shoulder and take a few more pictures before she needed to rest. One night, she said she wished we'd met when she was healthy, that maybe we could have had something real. I leaned in to kiss her, but she turned her face away. "Don't fall for a dying woman," she said softly. "It's the worst choice you could make. It'll just make me feel worse." The next morning, I got a call from someone claiming to be her lawyer. They said Elaine had died peacefully in her sleep, and the funeral was in 2 days. The words didn't seem real. The news hit harder than I could have ever expected. I showed up at the funeral home in my only suit. The funeral director handed me a program with one of our selfies printed on the front. The obituary listed me as her dearest friend. I cried through the entire service, all tears, talking about her adventures, her courage, and how lucky I felt to have known her. I thought I was doing something good for someone who died alone and afraid, but now, 3 months later, I'm standing in a restaurant staring at her across the room. She's alive, healthy, blonde, dressed like someone who doesn't have a care in the world. She's laughing with some guy in a suit, like none of it ever happened. When she glances my way, I stand up. My legs feel weak, but I start walking toward her table anyway. I need answers. When she sees me coming, her face goes pale. She grabs her purse, says something quick to the guy beside her, and bolts for the back of the restaurant. I push past other tables, ignoring the people yelling when I bump their chairs. By the time I reach the alley behind the place, she's already gone. I just stand there, breathless in the dark, my heart pounding in my ears. My hands are shaking. I don't know if I'm angry, heartbroken, or just completely lost. Back at my apartment that night, I pull the funeral program out of my desk drawer. Our picture is right there on the cover. We look so happy. I scroll through our old texts. She'd thanked me for crying for her. She'd said I was a good friend. That she was grateful we met. Every message feels like a lie now. I can't sleep, so I start going over everything. The so-called lawyer never gave me a name or a callback number. The funeral home handled everything, but I never saw a death certificate. When I went back to her apartment after the service to pick up some photos, the building manager said the lease wasn't even under her name. None of it adds up. By morning, I've made up my mind. I need to find out the truth, but I'm not going to do anything reckless. I grab a notebook and make a list of concrete steps. 1. Contact the funeral home and ask questions. 2. Check vital records for a death certificate. 3. Talk to the police if I have to. 4. see if anyone else got paid to show up at that memorial. The next day, I open my call history and find the funeral home's number. My finger hesitates for a second before I press dial. A woman answers, and I ask to speak to whoever handled Elaine's service 3 months ago. She puts me on hold, and soft piano music plays. After a couple of minutes, a man picks up Alan Bellamy. I tell him my name, that I was listed as Elaine's friend, that I attended the service, and that I recently saw her alive. Silence. For so long I think the call dropped. When Alan finally speaks, his voice sounds uneasy. He says he needs to pull up her file and asks me to hold again. When he comes back, he says something that makes my stomach drop. It wasn't a funeral. It was technically a memorial service, because there were never any remains. No body. No ashes. Nothing. Alan sounds uneasy as he explains that someone paid cash for the venue, programs, and coordination. There wasn't much paperwork since there was no burial or cremation involved. He says memorials without remains aren't unusual when a body's donated to science or cremated privately. I ask whose name was on the payment, and after some wrestling, he returns saying it was signed with only an initial and last name, no ID, no card, no check. He promises to review the file and call me back. Next, I drive downtown to the Vital Records office. Under buzzing lights, I ask a clerk to look up Elaine's death certificate. She types slowly, then shakes her head, no record. She searches again by date, still nothing. 3 months is long enough, she says quietly, clearly suspicious herself. From there, I head straight to the police station. The officer at the desk looks bored until I say, I need to report possible fraud. His pen pauses when I mention a Craigslist ad paying $200 to cry at a funeral. I tell him everything, the fake friendship, the cancer story, the memorial, seeing her alive later. He asks for proof, so I show him texts, photos, and the program. He notes it all and says financial crimes will contact me. 2 days later, a woman calls, Detective Maeve Donnelly. Calm, professional. She asks me to come in for an interview. At the station, I recount the story again and show her the same evidence. When I mention the lawyer with no name or number, she frowns. That could be theft by deception, she says, explaining they'll need to prove intent. She asks if I'll cooperate. I say yes without hesitation. Donnelly suggests posting discreetly in local groups to find others who attended the memorial. We write a vague post together, no full name, no accusations. That evening, I post it to 3 community pages and close my phone. Hours later, a man named Elias LeBlanc messages me. He says he was paid $200 to pretend to be Elaine's cousin at the service. His tone is angry and embarrassed. He wants to meet. I send a screenshot to Donnelly. She tells me to meet him in public and update her. We agree on a coffee shop the next day. Elias shows up right on time. I recognize him from the service. He shows me texts almost identical to mine, same pay, same instructions, same rolled up $100 deposit. He says a person named rehandled payments. I text the name to Donnelly. We talk for an hour, comparing details. Neither of us ever met the so-called lawyer, and both were promised the second payment by mail. Elias admits he cried for real, believing her story about dying alone. I tell him I did too. We sit there in silence for a moment before exchanging numbers. That night, I study the funeral program again under my desk lamp. In the corner of the back page, I spot a tiny code, barely visible. It looks like a printer ID with a location tag. I take close-up photos and save them in a folder labeled evidence, along with everything else I've gathered. Then I text Detective Donnelly about the print shop code, and she replies that she'll check it first thing in the morning. The next day, I drive to the address from the code, a small print shop tucked between a dry cleaner and a tax office. Inside, I show the man behind the counter the memorial program. He studies it and says he remembers the order, 200 copies, paid in cash, rush service, picked up the day before the memorial. The name on the work order, Reese Barnett. I take a photo of it, thank him, and he mentions there's security footage from that day. He agrees to share it with police if officially requested. I send everything to Detective Donnelly, and a couple of hours later, she calls back. She found a Reese Barnett who runs a small business coordinating memorial services, nothing illegal on record. She's requesting the footage now and reminds me to stay patient and not confront anyone myself. I agree, even though I'm tempted to go straight to Elaine. A week passes with no updates. I can't stop thinking about seeing Elaine alive. Finally, I visit the restaurant again, not to confront her, just to ask questions. The manager, Kay Osborne, recognizes Elaine from the photo and says she often comes in on Thursday evenings, usually with another woman who might be Reese. They sit together for hours, talking over papers. Kay can't share footage, but agrees to cooperate with police and writes down what she knows. 3 days later, Detective Donnelly calls. The subpoenas for both the restaurant and print shop footage were approved quickly. She warns it'll take time to review everything, but tells me the case is progressing. I tell her I'll wait, though inside I'm angry and ashamed, not about the $200, but about believing Elaine so completely. That night, I start writing everything down, not for evidence, but to understand how someone could fake dying and use kindness like a tool. Every memory feels poisoned, but I write them anyway. She didn't just steal money, she stole trust.my trust and genuine grief. That's what she really stole. I write until my hand cramps, then close the notebook and put it away. 2 weeks pass with no major updates from Detective Donnelly. She's still reviewing footage, building the case. I try to stay busy with other Craigslist jobs, more cautious now. 1 Thursday evening, I walk past the restaurant where Elaine usually shows up. I tell myself it's coincidence, but when I see her sitting at that same corner table in a blue sweater, my heart jumps. I start recording through the window. She looks up, sees me, and panics, grabs her purse and runs. I chase her outside, but she jumps into a dark sedan and speeds off. I capture about 15 seconds of video showing her face clearly and send it to Detective Donnelly. The next morning, Donnelly calls, says the footage helped push the restaurant subpoena through faster. A few days later, she asks me to come in. At the station, she shows me security clips of Elaine and Reese meeting at the restaurant, exchanging envelopes, talking for hours. It's now officially a fraud investigation. We go over Elaine's supposed illness, and Donnelly points out all the inconsistencies, no symptoms, no medical evidence, nothing real. That night, I check the photos Elaine once showed me and do reverse image searches. Many are stock photos, her bucket list memories were mostly fake. I save the evidence and send it to Donnelly. Later, I find a video online of my own eulogy for her. Watching myself cry over her fake death makes me sick. She probably watched it too, proud of her performance. 2 days later, Donnelly says prosecutors are considering charges of theft by deception and scheme to defraud, but they need more victims to build a stronger case. Alan from the funeral home calls later, saying he found receipts for prepaid cards used to pay for the memorial. The contact number matches Reese's. He sounds shaken and says they're tightening their verification process. Every new detail makes it clearer. Elaine didn't just fake dying, she built an entire industry out of it. I thank Alan for checking and add the prepaid card info to my evidence file. A week later, I spot Elaine and Reese together again at the same coffee shop. I take several photos through the window, their faces clear, timestamp noted, and send them to Detective Donnelly. She reminds me to stay safe and not engage directly. 3 days later, I get a text from an unknown number. I'm sorry. The area code matches Elaine's. I forward it to Donnelly, who tells me not to respond yet. But after an hour of staring at it, I break and text back, asking to meet. She replies, okay. 2 days later, I wait on a park bench near the library. Elaine arrives right on time, but looks different, tired, older. She sits at a distance, says nothing, then suddenly stands and walks off when she spots an unmarked police car pulling in. I text everything I remember from our last conversation, her talk about loneliness, debt, and calling the memorial a social experiment. Donnelly calls soon after, frustrated but calm. She says Elaine left before officers could reach her and reminds me I can't do solo meetings anymore. I send her all my notes. A week later, Donnelly gets the restaurant footage. It shows Elaine and Reese meeting multiple times, passing envelopes, photos, and cash. Elaine's also seen with several other emotional people, likely more victims. Kay confirms Elaine's cash payments every Thursday for 6 months and provides receipts. Then the warrant for Reese's P.O. box reveals everything. Sympathy cards from strangers, cash, and gift cards hidden inside, fake charity donations. Evidence of at least 15 fake memorials over the past year. 2 days later, they bring Reese in. From the observation room, I watch her act calm and professional, claiming she only organized legitimate events and knew nothing of Elaine's lies. Her lawyer blocks most questions, and she's released for now. After that, Elaine disappears. No sign of her at the restaurant, the coffee shop, anywhere. It's like she knew we were closing in and vanished before the truth could catch her. 3 weeks after the park, I find a handwritten note slipped under my door, cream paper, Elaine's handwriting. She says she's sorry, not asking forgiveness, just admitting she was wrong. I read it over and over, unsure if it's real or another manipulation. Sitting at my kitchen table, I realize I don't want revenge. I just want to make sure she can't do this to anyone else. I call Detective Donnelly and tell her. She says that's mature and that the best way to protect others is to cooperate with the prosecution. I hand over the note. A few days later, she calls with a plan, a controlled meeting using Elaine's number. We go over everything carefully, public place, officers nearby, and I stick to the script. At the diner, Elaine shows up on time, looking scared and tired. She starts apologizing, admits she's done this before, says she wanted to feel valued. I keep her talking until I see movement behind her, Detective Donnelly and 2 officers. When Elaine realizes what's happening, her face just breaks. They arrest her quietly, and I go home feeling empty, not relieved. I cry for an hour, then look up therapists and book an appointment. In the following weeks, I work with the prosecutor's office on my victim impact statement. I describe how Elaine exploited compassion and how it affected my trust. Months later, she pleads guilty to multiple fraud charges. Reese pleads guilty too. The deal includes restitution, probation, and community service.